Okay, let's talk about Eddard 11. Eddard 11 is one of the weirder chapters because the whole thing feels like there's something suspicious going on and that Ned is getting played by everyone. Like nothing seems right in this chapter. This was a chapter very, very early on when I think way back at the beginning of my channel when people were like, "Oh, you need to do a video on R plus L equals J," and I remember rereading a Game of Thrones many times, specifically the Ned story, trying to figure out what was going on with the visions he had and things like that. And so I was going over Ned over and over again, and Eddard 11 always stuck out as this incredibly, incredibly weird chapter that just everyone seems to be lying and nothing seems to make sense. And it led to some theory videos that I did. But looking back on it all, one of the things in those early analyses that I didn't do was consider like what George was thinking at the time and what knowledge he had at the time. I was going with like, well, later on, this and this and this is revealed, and we can make conclusions. But really, George was thinking about things at the time here. For example, I made a big deal about the fact that Vance lands and Dairy lands aren't near each other at all, but that isn't really established in George's mind when he's writing a Game of Thrones and things like that. But yeah, and even the show kind of went with the fact that it was a very suspicious chapter and also play, even though it's different characters, it's Littlefinger instead of Varys, kind of manipulating Ned in that scene. There's definitely this feeling of manipulation. And in the end, it's an important chapter for the establishment of the Brotherhood without banners. But I don't know, all in all, I don't really know what to make of it because it's so weird. Anyway, let's get into it. Through the high narrow windows of the Red Keep's cavernous throne room, the light of the sunset spilled across the floor, laying dark red stripes upon the walls where the heads of the dragons had once hung. Before we'd learned that the dragon heads were in the basement, and so now we find that they were here. Now the stone was covered in hunting tapestries, vivid with greens and browns and blues. Yet it seemed to Ned Stark that the only color in the hall was the red of blood. This isn't the first time we've heard about the hunting tapestries, but obviously the hunting tapestries just keep appearing. This they get taken down, and then they get and you hear about them getting taken down, and then they get shipped off to the Vale, and like what's going on with these hunting tapestries? It's just these things that keep appearing. We don't know where that's going, if anywhere at all, but it's just one of those weird things that's there. He sat upon the immense ancient seat of Aegon the Conqueror, an ironwork monstrosity of spikes and jagged edges and grotesquely twisted metal. It was, as Robert had warned him, a hellishly uncomfortable chair, and never more so than now, with the shattered leg throbbing more sharply every minute. The metal beneath him had grown harder by the hour, and the fanged steel behind made it impossible to lean back. A king should never sit easy, Aegon the Conqueror had said when he commanded his armorers to forge a great seat from the swords laid down by his enemies. Damn Aegon for his arrogance, Ned thought sullenly, and damn Robert at his hunting as well. Yes, the Iron Throne is first described here, and it is in detail, and it's an asinine chair. It's an asinine chair. No one would sit on it. We're talking about a chair that many kings have died and hurt themselves, lost fingers. Maegor is impaled on it. Viserys loses fingers. Rhaenyra cuts herself. The Mad King Aerys is constantly cutting himself. Why would anyone keep sitting in this seat? Why would anyone keep sitting in this chair? It's yes, it's a really cool looking thing and really cool idea, but no, it's asinine. No reasonable person would continue to sit in this chair. To what end? To intimidate people, but people don't seem that intimidated. Really, really impractical. I understand that it's like so iconic. I mean, absolutely iconic. But come on. I mean, when people are losing fingers and dying upon it and cutting themselves and getting infections, no, come on, no. I mean, would you sit on a chair that your father or grandfather lost a finger on? Like, would you do that? It's silly. You are quite certain that these were more than brigands? Varys asked softly from the council table beneath the throne. Grandmaster Pycelle stirred uneasily beside him, while Littlefinger toyed with a pen. They were the only counselors in attendance. A white hart had been sighted in the Kingswood, and Lord Renly and Sir Barristan had joined the king to hunt it, along with Prince Joffrey, Sandor Clegane, Balon Swan, and half the court. So Ned must needs sit the Iron Throne in his absence. So this is some other weirdness to everything. Okay, so the sighting of the White Hart seems to be in by chance. And this White Hart comes back, right? This White Hart comes back in House of the Dragon and such. But he's going to see this like lucky White Hart, and it's been sighted. Now, unless it was a Lannister spy that lied about this White Hart, there's no, it's by chance that Robert isn't there. And so Tywin's plan to send brigands into the Riverlands doesn't really work if it's, well, it depends on like which plan. So here in a Game of Thrones, the plan that Ned considers is that Tywin is trying to provoke Edmure. But then in A Storm of Swords, Harwin reveals that the plan was to provoke Ned and kill Ned, and that he lucked out by having the broken leg, kind of like that old Chinese story about the man who falls off the horse and he thinks it's bad luck, but then all of the people are commanded to go to war, and so it's good luck. It's one of those situations with Ned in A Storm of Swords, that he would have been brought out to be killed. He would have been provoked to be killed if it weren't for him breaking his leg. But in fact, it's all reliant on the appearance of this heart. So, the idea that Tywin would have been doing this, and it would have been Robert that would have been hearing this and trying to figure out what to do, kind of changes the whole thing. I mean, I suppose we could say, oh, the sighting of the White Hart was a ruse. But Tywin's plan doesn't really make sense if the White Hart is a real thing. And I suppose there's some issues. Maybe you could, say that well, no, then there's the issue of say he waited he waited to hear that Robert was going off, and then he decided to send the brigands, which timeline-wise doesn't work because it takes many weeks for these guys to ride out to the Riverlands. But if he knew about Robert leaving, then he would have known about Ned's leg. So, I'm not, this Tywin Lannister master plan thing doesn't really fit either. Because why doesn't he have the information about Ned's leg? And does he know about the heart? Anyway, at least he could sit. Save the counselors. The rest must stand respectfully or kneel. The petitioners clustered near the tall doors, the knights and high lords and ladies beneath the tapestries. The small folk in the gallery, the mailed guards in their cloaks, gold and gray, all stood. supposedly Ned Dana's there, and Ned is sitting there looking at all the knights and high lords, but he doesn't see Ned Dane or Starfall or any of that. But see, you can see I have so many problems with this chapter, because there's supposed to be some sort of scheming conspiracy going on, but none of the pieces fit together at all. The villagers were kneeling, men, women, and children alike, tattered and bloodied, their faces drawn by fear. 3 knights who had been brought to them here to bear witness stood behind them. Brigands, Lord Varys, Sir Raymond Derry's voice dripped with scorn. Oh, they were brigands, no doubt. Lannister brigands. Ned could feel the unease in the hall, as high lords and servants alike strained to listen. He could not pretend to be surprised. The West had been a tinderbox since Catelyn had seized Tyrion Lannister. Both Riverrun and Casterly Rock had called their banners, and armies were amassing in the pass below the Golden Tooth. It had only been a matter of time until the blood began to flow. The sole question that remained was how best to staunch the wound. So, yes, like right now, they think they're going to go to war with the Lannisters. So Raymond Derry seems to have people that have attacked his lands. His lands are near the Trident. Because we know that that's established in them heading to King's Landing, because Rhaegar's rubies are there and all of that. But then we get the Vances. Sad-eye Sir Carl Vance, who would have been handsome but for the wine-stained birthmark that discolored his face, gestured at the kneeling villagers. This is all the remains of the holdfast of Sharer, Lord Eddard. The rest are dead, along with the people of Wendish Town and Mummer's Ford. Okay, so we don't really know where Sharer, Wendish Town, and Mummer's Ford are, but the assumption is that one of them is Dairy Lands, one of them is Vance Land, and one of them is the third one is the Third Knight. How am I missing it? Dairy, Vance, and we'll get to it. Carl Vance, of course, named after the author of the Dying Earth, Jack Vance. Rise, Ned commanded the villagers. He never trusted what a man told him from his knees. All of you up. Trying to think like what Garrett was on when he ranted about the others, if he was on his knees or not. In ones and twos, the holdfast of Sharer struggled to its feet. One ancient needed to be helped, and a young girl in a bloody dress stayed on her knees, staring blankly at Sir Aerys Oakhart, who stood by the foot of the throne in the white armor of the King's Guard, ready to protect and defend the king, or, Ned supposed, the king's hand. Joss, Sir Raymond Derry said to a plump, balding man in a brewer's apron. Tell the hand what happened at Sharer. Joss nodded. If it please his grace. His grace is hunting across the Blackwater, Ned said, wondering how a man could live his whole life a few days' ride from the Red Keep and still have no notion what his king looked like. Ned was clad in a white linen doublet with a direwolf of Stark on the breast. His black wool cloak fastened to the collar by a silver hand of his office, black, white, and gray. All the shades of truth. It's pretty poetic. I am Lord Eddard Stark, the king's hand. Tell me who you are and what you need of these raiders. So, his assumption here is that Joss is from Sharer, and that's only a few days' ride from the Red Keep. Which that just doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, but it's like, it's got to be at least a week to like a fast ride, like or more to the Trident. I mean, we're specifically told that it takes them a couple weeks to get from the Trident to King's Landing. That his lands are somehow only a few days ride from the Red Keep, and that means they would have been attacked by the Mountain. Like they would have been really far to the east. Oh, geez. So I mean, this is what I'm talking about, and trying to figure out geography here. I mean, King's Landing. We're down here in the bottom right. We have King's Landing. It's a more than a week to get up to the Trident. Even if you're trying to say like Mummer's Ford, that's the same distance if you're going along the Blackwater Rush and things like that. So this idea that the lands are a few days ride from the Red Keep is just off. And so it's just another one of these things where if you're trying to figure out geography, it's just nothing really works out. Which makes the whole thing just seem weird. Like people are acting weird and suspicious already, but then you top on top of it all of this like non-established geography and mistakes and all sorts of stuff like that. Then you don't know what you're doing here. People are going to be angry at me that I'm trashing this chapter so much. I kept an alehouse, my lord, in Scherer by the stone bridge, the finest alehouse south of the neck. Everyone said so, begging your pardons, my lord. It's gone now like the rest. They came and drank their fill and spilled the rest before they fired my roof, and they would have spilled my blood too if they caught me, my lord. Here's also really weird. This is a really weird aspect of the story, is that Clegane in A Clash of Kings has a story told him about him where they go to an alehouse, drink their fill, and then proceed to rape the daughter of the man who runs it, the brewer's daughter. And so this guy is named Joss, but Clegane's squire is also named Joss. So it's this really weird that there's all of these elements like that keep repeating themselves, of like Clegane and people named Joss going into alehouses and causing a bunch of trouble, causing horrible situations. It's I feel like kind of should have not used the name Joss at least twice, and had different stories about the mountain, perhaps besides him just going into alehouses. They burnt us out, a farmer beside him said. Come riding in the dark up from the south and fire the fields and houses alike, killing them as tried to stop them. They weren't no raiders, though, my lord. They had no mind to steal our stock, not these. They butchered my cows where she stood and left her for the flies and the crows. They rode down my prentice boy, said the squat man with a smith's muscles and bandage around his head. He had put on his finest clothes to come to court, but his breeches were patched, his cloak travel-stained and dusty. Chased him back and forth across the fields, and the horses poking at him with their lances like it was a game. Them laughing, and the boy stumbling and screaming till the big one pierced him clean through. So this is the first thing that you hear these stories, and these stories make no sense at all. Okay, so we're talking about the town of Sharer, and they're drinking in the alehouse, and then decide to burn the thing down. But then they're saying that they came riding in the dark up from the south, and then just started killing people and started taunting people. So, like, which was it? You know, were they at the alehouse and then started causing trouble there, or did they come in riding in the night? Or is this farmer live far enough from the alehouse that they finished with the alehouse and then they rode in from the night? But wouldn't he have seen the alehouse burning in the distance? Like, this is like, oh, I'm just chilling, and then they ride into the night and they start firing the fields and killing everybody and riding down Prentice boys. So we have these like two stories that don't really fit. Were they drinking at the inn? Are they drinking at the alehouse, or do they come riding into the night? Because if the first story is true, everybody's kind of getting to know that, oh, there's a big fire over there at the alehouse. Oh, geez. But this is more like, no, like we were all just having a quiet evening, and then they come in. So we get this idea that we shouldn't trust these peasants because their stories don't make any sense. The girl on her knees craned her head up at Ned high above her on the throne. They killed my mother too, Your Grace, and they her voice trailed off as if she'd forgotten what she was about to say. She began to sob. Okay, so that was Sharer. We have two different stories, so it's like, should we trust them? Sir Raymond Derry took up the tale. At Wendish Town, the people sought shelter in their holdfast, but the walls were timbered. The raiders piled straw against the wood and burnt them all alive. When the Wendish folk opened their gates to flee the fire, they shot them down with arrows as they came running out, even women and suckling babes. Well, so again, which was it? Like, did they burn them all alive? Or did they open the gates and kill them as they fled? Because you can't burn them all alive and kill them as they fled the fire. Like, those are two contradictory things. So again, it's like you're getting this idea of like that these stories don't make any sense. Oh, dreadful, murmured Varys. How cruel men can be. They would have done the same for us, but Sharer's holdfasts made of stone, Joss said. Some wanted to smoke us out, but the big one said there was riper fruit upriver, so they made for Mummer's Ford. So the idea is that at Sharer, they were burning the fields and burning everything down. Everybody ran to the holdfast, and they could hear the big one. They're in the holdfast, hiding in the holdfast, and then they suddenly go, oh, I can hear somebody go all the way down there say, riper fruits upriver. You know, like, how are they hearing that? Like Ned could feel cold steel against his fingers as he leaned forward. Between each finger was a blade, the points of twisted swords fanning out like talons from the arms of the throne. Even after 3 centuries, some were still sharp enough to cut. The Iron Throne was full of traps for the unwary. This is this thing, like, why don't you guys just dull the blades? Just dull the blades a little. You know, there's no reason to have them sharp. The song said it had taken 1,000 blades to make it, heated white hot in a furnace beneath Balerion the Black Dread. The hammering had taken 59 days. The end of it was this hunched black beast made of razor edges and barbs and ribbons of sharp metal. A chair that could kill a man. It had, if the stories could be believed. Yeah, it's just, yeah, why would anyone sit in this? Just, dull down the blades or something. When Eddard Stark was what Eddard Stark was doing sitting there, he would never comprehend, and yet there he sat. And these people looked to him for justice. What proof do you have that these were Lannisters, he asked, trying to keep his fury under control. Did they wear crimson cloaks or fly lion banners? Even Lannisters are not so blind as stupid as that. Oh, Piper. Mark Piper is the third one. He was swaggering. He was a swaggering bantam rooster of a youth, too young and too hot-blooded for Ned's taste, though a fast friend of Catelyn's brother Edmure Tully. Every man among them was mounted and mailed, my lord. And yet they were drinking at the... I mean, maybe they put their armor back on slowly. I mean, right? I mean, this idea is that Derry is the one that seems to be hosting Joss. And so Sherer seems to be on Derry lands. And then Wendish Town seems to be on Vance lands. And then I imagine Mummer's Ford is up on Piper lands. Every man was mounted and mailed. So Carl answered calmly. They were armed with steel-tipped lances and longswords, with battle axes for the butchering. You gestured towards one of the ragged survivors. You, yes, you. No one's going to hurt you. Tell the hand what you told me. The old man bobbed his head. Concerning their horses, he said, they were war horses they rode. Many a year I worked at old Sir Willem's stables, so I know the difference. Not one of those ever pulled a plow. God bear witness if I'm wrong. Well-mounted brigands, observed Littlefinger. Perhaps they stole the horses from the last place they raided. But they were all at the ale. They were all at the house, at the ale house. Did they take off all of their armor and then burn it down and then put their armor back on for war and ride? How many men were in the raiding party? 50, 100 at least, Joss answered in the same instant as the bandaged smith said. So 100 people were drinking at his... 100 people. I don't know if that many fit in any medieval alehouse, but 100. But then 50, the grandmother behind him. Hundreds and hundreds, my lord. An army it was. So... Again, contradictions. How many are there? You are more right than you know, good woman, Lord Eddard told her. You say they flew no banners. What armor did they wear? Did any of you note ornaments or decorations, devices, shields, or helm? The brewer, Joss, shook his head. It grieves me, my lord, but no. The armor they showed us was plain only. The one who led them, he was armored like the rest, but there was no mistaking him all the same. It was the size of him, my lord. Those, as say the giants are all dead, never saw this one, I swear. Big as an ox he was, and a voice like stone breaking. The mountain, Sir Mark said loudly. Can any man doubt it? This was Gregor Clegane's work. Now, I will say that later in the Game of Thrones, when the mountain is seen at the Battle of the Green Fork, it's true. He has no devices or sigils or anything on him. This is an accurate description of his armor. Ned heard muttering from beneath the windows and the far end of the hall. Even in the galley, nervous whispers were exchanged. High lords and small folk alike knew what it could mean if Mark was proved right. Sir Gregor Clegane stood bannerman to Lord Tywin Lannister. So you know, what I'm saying here is that we've got this chapter presented where a bunch of stories don't seem to add up. And the conclusion is that it's the mountain. And all of the characters that we don't trust, Varys and Littlefinger, are pushing Ned into action. And so, it's funny that in the end, the answer is no, actually, it really was the mountain. And there was no... All of those peasants' tales were... I mean, they all contradicted, but there's nothing to it. There's nothing behind the contradiction of all of those tales and the fact that these cities and villages are very far from each other in these lords' rule lands that are not near each other. There's just nothing to it. I've had some people say, yes, after reading this, it does seem like George was setting something up and then just never went anywhere with it. Like it's very clear that these stories are suspicious, but it was just kind of a dropped plot. And he still had the Brotherhood Without Banners and all of that, but what exactly was going on is just he just decided not to go with it. He was gardening, and some plants just never bloom. He studied the frightened faces of the villagers. Small wonder they had been so fearful. They had thought they were being dragged here to name Lord Tywin a red-handed butcher before a king who was his son by marriage. He wondered if the knights had given them a choice. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the villagers seemed that they seem to share what they wanted. They seem to share what they knew. Also, what is a random villager like? Do they know who the mountain is? I don't know. Grandmaster Pycelle rose ponderously from the council table, his chain of office clinking. Sir Mark, with respect, you cannot know that this outlaw was Sir Gregor. There are many large men in the realm. As large as the mountain that rides, said Carl. I've never met one. Nor has any man here, Raymond added hotly. Even his brother is a pup beside him. My lords, open your eyes. Do you need to see his seal on the corpses? It was Gregor. And this is one of those situations again where in the contemporary story, when Sir Robert Strong is appearing, it's very obviously Gregor Clegane. Some people joke like, what happens if he takes off his helmet? It turns out Robert Strong is actually Robert Strong, that he was just another guy who was really big. But it's one of those things where of course, like when Lady Nim sees Robert Strong, she's going to assume that it's Gregor Clegane. Why should Sir Gregor turn brigand? Pycelle asked. By the grace of his liege lord, he holds a stout keep and lands of his own. The man is an anointed knight, anointed by Rhaegar Targaryen. A false knight, Sir Mark said. Lord Tywin's mad dog. My Lord Han, mad dog. People have heard the stories about the sack of King's Landing. My Lord Han, Pycelle declared in a stiff voice, I urge you to remind this good knight that Lord Tywin Lannister is the father of our own gracious queen. Thank you, Grandmaster Pycelle, Ned said. I fear we might have forgotten that if you hadn't pointed it out. From his vantage point atop the throne, he could see men slipping out the door at the far end of the hall. Hares going to ground, he supposed, or rats off to nibble the queen's cheese. So he's saying cowards wanting to hide, or rats going off to tell the queen for some money. He caught a glimpse of Septa Morgane in the gallery. with his daughter Sansa beside her. Ned felt a flash of anger. This was no place for a girl. I mean, bringing my young son to an execution, that's one thing. But, bringing a girl to court and for the ordering of an execution. But the septic could not have known that today's court would be anything but the usual tedious business of hearing petitions, settling disputes between rival holdfasts, and adjudicating the placement of boundary stones. At the council table below, Peter Baelish lost interest in his quill and leaned forward. Sir Mark, Sir Carl, Sir Raymond, perhaps I might ask you a question. These holdfasts were under your protection. Where were you when all this slaughtering and burning was going on? Carl Vance answered, I was attending my lord father in the pass below the Golden Tooth, as was Sir Mark. When the word of these outrages reached Sir Edmure Tully, he sent word that we should take a small force of men to find what survivors we could and bring them to the king. Sir Raymond Derry spoke up. Sir Edmure had summoned me to Riverrun with all of my strength. I was camped across the river from the walls, awaiting his command when the word reached me. By the time I could return to my own lands, Clegane and his vermin were back across the Red Fork, riding for Lannister Hills. So, it's again, this is the other thing is like Derry lands and where the Red Fork, by the time I could return from Riverrun. So the attacks seem to be somewhere between Riverrun and Derry, but and they somehow cross to the north. Though, I don't know where this later. I think later we find out Mummer's Ford is south of Riverrun. So how they crossed, who knows? But it's this thing about geography doesn't really make any sense. Littlefinger stroked the point of his beard thoughtfully. And if they come again, sir, if they come, we'll use their blood to water the fields they burnt, Sir Mark Piper declared hotly. Sir Edmure sent men to every village and holdfast within a day's ride of the border, Carl explained. The next raiders will not have an easy time of it. A day's ride of the border. It's not very far. I mean, days ride isn't very far. Okay. So here we get to Eddard's analysis. And that may be precisely what Lord Tywin wants, Ned thought to himself. To bleed off the strength of Riverrun, goad the boy into scattering his swords. If his wife's brother was young and more gallant and wise, he would try to hold every inch of his soil, to defend every man, woman, and child who named him Lord. And Tywin Lannister was shrewd enough to know that. So Ned's assessment makes a lot of sense. That Tywin is planning for an actual attack, and it has nothing to do with what's going on in King's Landing. It has to do with Edmure, and that he's trying to spread Edmure's forces thin. Harwin and the Storm of Swords story, that it was all for Ned to try to get Ned to come out, doesn't really make any sense. Now, if we want to go on what, that Harwin has no information, that this is just Harwin coming up with this shit off the top of his head. And, but as we read it, we're presented one of those things. It's sort of like, Joffrey sent the cat's paw, like Tyrion thinks about it, therefore it must be fact. Harwin tells this story to Arya, therefore it should be fact. But Harwin's story makes no sense. It makes no sense because how would Tywin know about the White Hart? How would he know about Ned's leg? Or if he didn't know about Ned's leg, why he wouldn't know about the heart? It's not to mention the fact that Ned is supposed to send ill and pain as the king's justice to do the work, not himself. But I guess if he knew that the northerner needs to swing the sword himself and all that shit, it doesn't fit. But this fits, that Tywin is just trying to get Edmure to go around. So I kind of think that Eddard has more sense than a Harwin, but if your fields and holdfasts are safe from harm, Lord Peter was saying, what then do you ask of the throne? The lords of the Trident keep the king's peace, Sir Raymond Derry said. The Lannisters have broken it. We ask leave to answer them, steel for steel. We ask justice for the small folk of Scherer, Wendish and the Mummers Ford. Edmure agrees. We must pay Gregor Clegane back with his bloody coin, Sir Mark declared. But old Lord Hoster's commanded us to come here and beg the king's leave before we strike. Thank the gods for old Lord Hoster, then. Tywin Lannister was as much of a fox as a lion. If indeed he sent Sir Gregor to burn and pillage, and Ned did not doubt he had, he'd taken care to see that he rode under cover of night without banners, in the guise of a common brigand. Should Riverlands strike back, Cersei and her father would insist that it had been the Tullys who broke the king's peace, not the Lannisters. The gods only knew what Robert would believe. I mean, if Tywin were smart, he wouldn't have sent the Mountain, a clearly identifiable guy. Then that would all make sense. Grandmaster Pycelle was on his feet again. My lord Hand, if these good folk believe that Sir Gregor has forsaken his holy vows for plunder and rape, let them go to his liege lord and make their complaint. These crimes are no concern of the throne. Let them seek Lord Tywin's justice. It is all the king's justice, Ned told him. North, south, east, west. All we do in Robert's name. The king's justice, Grandmaster Pycelle said. So it is, and so we should defer this matter until the king is hunting across the river and may not return for days, Lord Eddard said. Robert bid me to sit here in his place, to listen with his ears and speak with his voice. I mean to do just that, though I agree that he must be told. He saw a familiar face beneath the tapestries. Sir Robar Royce stepped forward, bowed. My lord. Robar Royce, of course, later joins Renly as part of the Rainbow Guard. Your father is hunting with the king, Ned said. Will you bring them word of what was said and done here today? At once, my lord. Do we have your leave to take our vengeance against Sir Gregor, then? Mark Piper asked the throne. Vengeance? I thought we were speaking of justice. I fucking love this line. Vengeance. I thought we were speaking of justice. Because if this is the birth of the Brotherhood Without Banners, and the Brotherhood Without Banners is absolutely an exploration of what is morality and what is right. And it's funny because Pycelle is literally saying, oh, well, the king's justice is what the king decides. And Ned is like, nope. The king's justice goes beyond that. Justice is something that's right. But what is it? How do you define it? We're not getting it from religion, and we're not getting it from some sort of set laws that a random person sets. They're trying, in Ned's head, it's something about protecting people and appropriately punishing people that harm others. And that's clearly like Ned's idea of justice, which is the correct answer, not just deferring to somebody else, which is what happens so often in this story and in life. People just kind of go, well, whatever that person believes is what's right, or deferring to some sort of religious code that also depends on a person's interpretation of in order of what's going to be prioritized and followed and what's not. But it is not just eye for an eye. It's not just vengeance. He's talking justice. So burning Clegane's fields and slaughtering his people will not restore the king's peace. Only your injured pride. He glanced away before the young knight could voice his outraged protest and address the villagers. People of Sharer, I cannot give you back your homes or your crops, nor can I restore your dead to life, but perhaps I can give you some small measure of justice in the name of our King Robert. Hold on, I'm like, what about the people of Wendish Town? So only the people of Sharer are there, right? And it's just Piper and Derry speaking on behalf of Mummers Ford and Wendish Town? Because everybody at Wendish Town died? Yeah. I think that's the case. At Wendish Town. See, Derry is speaking for Wendish Town, so they're all dead. And then Mummers Ford, we don't have anybody. So all the stories from the small folk were all from Sharer, which means they don't. Yeah, none of them make sense. They rode in the night, or they were at the ale house. The Wendish Town. They're all burned alive, or they were killed as they escaped. I cannot give you back your homes or your crops, but I cannot restore your dead to life. But perhaps I can give you some small measure of justice in the name of our King Robert. Every eye in the hall was fixed on him, waiting. Slowly, Ned struggled to his feet, pushing himself up from the throne with the strength of his arms, his shattered legs screaming inside its cast. He did his best to ignore the pain. It was no moment to let them see his weakness. The first men believed that the judge who called for death should wield the sword, and in the north we hold to that still. I mislike sending another to do my killing, yet it seems I have no choice. He gestured at his broken leg. So this is this idea that Tywin purposely sent the mountains so he'd be identified, so that Ned would come out in order to execute him, but somehow he knew about Ned's leg, but he didn't know. Or I'm sorry, Tywin didn't know about Ned's leg, but he did know about that Robert wouldn't be there because of the heart. Even though Robert leaves for his hunting trip after Ned breaks his leg. Lord Eddard! This makes me think of Lyanna. The shout came from the west side of the hall as a handsome stripling of a boy strode forth boldly. Out of his armor, Sir Loras Tyrell looked even younger than his 16 years. He wore pale blue silk, his belt a linked chain of golden roses, the sigil of his house. I beg you the honor of acting in your place. Give this task to me, my lord, and I shall not fail you. Littlefinger chuckled. Sir Loras, if we send you off alone, Sir Gregor will send you back your head with a plum stuffed in that pretty little mouth of yours. The mountain is not the sort to bend his neck to any man's justice. I do not fear Gregor Clegane, Loras said haughtily. Ned eased himself slowly back onto the hard iron seat of Aegon's misshapen throne. His eyes searched the faces along the wall, and yet he doesn't see Eddard Dane. Lord Beric, he called out. Thoros of Myr, Sir Gladden, Lord Luther. I think that's Lord Luther Wild. Sir Gladden is... who is he? No, it's Gladden Wild. Sir Lothar... No, not Lord Lothar. Who's Lord Lothar? Huh? Who is it? Lord Lothar. Let's look at this. There's Lothar Mallory. Yeah, it's Lothar Mallory. Yeah. House Mallory. Okay. The men named stepped forward one by one. Each of you is to assemble 20 men to bring my word to Gregor's Keep. 20 of my own guard shall go with you. Lord Beric Dondarrion, you shall have the command, as befits your rank. Now, I always think this is kind of a funny command, because it's like, okay, so it seems like does Thoros of Myr have men? Like, does he have 20 dudes? Like, he's a random priest, right? And Sir Gladden Wild, does he have men? I mean, Lord Beric and Lord Lothar, okay, you're lords, you can command people around, but Sir Gladden Wild, I mean, are you just like convincing other wilds? Is he a landed knight? See, at least if he's a landed knight, maybe he could. He's just a knight. Yeah, I guess. Oh, by the way, Sir Gladden Wilds is supposedly named after a river, where Isildur is ambushed, and so there's like this similar situation with Mummer's Ford. But I don't know where Thoros is getting 20 men. Maybe he has Lord Beric like spot him the 20. It's like, hey, can you spot me 20 men? Can you bring 40? Fine. So you get like 100 guys going. The young lord with red gold hair bowed. As you command, Lord Eddard. Ned raised his voice so it carried to the far end of the room. In the name of Robert of House Baratheon, the first of his name, King of the Andals and the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdom and Protector of the Realm, by the word of Eddard of House Stark, his hand, I charge you to ride to the Westerlands in all haste, to cross the Red Fork of the Trident under the King's flag, and there bring the King's justice to the false knight Gregor Clegane, and to all those who shared in his crimes. I denounce him and attaint him, and strip him of all ranks and titles, and of all lands and incomes and holdings, and do sentence him to death. May the gods take pity on his soul. Another error. So, eventually it's established that Clegane's lands, I mean, first of all, if you're heading to the Westerlands, you're not crossing the fucking Red Fork. Okay? You're going to take the Gold Road. This is established in your fucking map. This is the map of a Game of Thrones, okay? But instead they decide to take this like really roundabout route where they decide, you know what, let's not take the Gold Road. Let's cross the Red Fork. Let's go back to Mummer's Ford. Let's go back to the scene of the crime. Even though we're specifically told that we're supposed to go to Clegane's Keep. Ride to the Westlands. I mean, unless he's saying find him? I mean, but Clegane could be anywhere. He could literally be anywhere. He says ride to the Westlands. Is that also a mistake? Should it be Westerlands? Let me see if this has been... It might just be my my version, but I'm going to check this. Does he say Westlands? Yeah, no, he says Westlands. What is it? What's going on here? Okay. I mean, is he saying go into the Riverlands and find this dude? Or go to his keep where he lives and arrest him? Ride to the Westlands with all haste to cross the Red Fork and the Trident under the King's flag. He could be anywhere. could be fucking anywhere. This happened like weeks ago. Like the amount of time for all this to happen, and then because keep in mind this happens, and then news makes it to the Golden Tooth, and then from the Golden Tooth they're ordered to go back, pick up dudes, and then go to King's Landing. Like this is fucking weeks have gone by. You think Clegane is? I mean, he happens to actually be like hiding at Mummer's Ford. He is, but like, why would anyone assume that they're on this route? Like, why wouldn't you take the Gold Road to Clegane's Keep? God. When the echo of his word had died away, the Knight of Flowers seemed perplexed. Lord Eddard, what of me? Ned looked down on him. From on high, Loras Tyrell seemed almost as young as Robb. That's the big thing, is that he's Robb's age. No one doubts your valor, Sir Loras, but we're all about justice here, and what you seek is vengeance. He looked back at Lord Beric. Right at first light, these things are best done quickly. He held up a hand. The throne will hear no more petitions today. Now I think he gives a different answer later here. So he tells Loras that you're too hot-headed. You're looking for vengeance. But in fact, later he says that Loras is too young. Yet, I mean, Beric Dondarrion is bringing his squire Ned Dane, who's even younger. Anyway, Alan and Porther climb the steep iron steps to help him back down. So Alan ends up going on this, and Porther doesn't. Both of these characters, Porther and Alan, die at some point. People just start talking about them being dead, but no one knows how either one of these characters specifically dies. Alan was apparently a hero at Mummer's Ford, and Porther is just at some point he's just dead. You know, I mean, maybe in the coup. As they made their descent, he could feel Loras' sullen stare. The boy had stalked away before Ned reached the floor of the throne room. At the base of the Iron Throne, Varys was gathering papers from the council table. Littlefinger and Grand Maester Pycelle had already taken their leave. Papers, yeah. You're a bolder man than I, my lord, the eunuch said softly. How so, Lord Varys? Ned asked brusquely. His leg was throbbing, and he was in no mood for word games. If it had been up to me, I should have sent Sir Loras. He so wanted to go, and a man who has the Lannisters for his enemies would do well to make the Tyrells his friends. And this is very true as well. Like, Lord Tywin, if Harwin is correct, that this is all Lord Tywin's scheme, his calculus that Ned would not send Loras is insane. Like, and then, I mean, had he sent Loras would have been killed or been part of the Brotherhood Without Banners or whatever, and you'd have the Tyrells against the Lannisters during the war, and that would have changed everything. So it's such a risk on Lord Tywin's part. Like, Tywin, like, in the end, like, people are like, oh, Tywin Lannister is such a genius. I don't know. I think he just has Littlefinger luck. He just has fucking Littlefinger luck here. If this is a plan, like Harwin says, he's so lucky. He's so lucky that Loras wasn't sent. Oh, man. Loras is young. I dare say he will outgrow the disappointment. And Sir Ilyn. The eunuch stroked a plump powdered cheek. He is the king's justice, after all, sending other men to do his office. Some might construe that as a grave insult. Again, like, why wasn't Ilyn Payne sent? I don't know. I mean, that's like, or why would Tywin not? I mean, I guess Tywin didn't care if Ilyn Payne was sent. It ends up having no impact on anything. No slight was intended, in truth. Ned did not trust the mute knight, though perhaps that was only because he misliked executioners. Does Ned hate himself? Ned's an executioner. I mean, I think what they mean is that, like, he hates that Ilyn is being used as executioners. It's funny though to actually dislike the executioner. The executioner is just hired. The person making the decision that an executioner is going to do the work is the king. He should mislike the king. It's the king's fault that he's passing on the responsibility to an executioner, not the executioner for accepting it. I remind you, the Paynes are bannermen to House Lannister. I thought it best to choose men who owed Lord Tywin no fealty. Very prudent, no doubt, Varys said. Still, I chanced to see Sir Ilyn in the back of the hall, staring at us with those pale eyes of his, and I must say he did not look pleased. Though to be sure, it was hard to tell with our silent night. I hope he outgrows his disappointment as well. He does love his work. And I guess is this idea that Ilyn Payne followed Joffrey's orders really well because he didn't like Eddard, because he was slighted here. But I think Ilyn Payne probably would have followed his orders regardless. I mean, that's his job, and it's Ilyn Payne. I mean, his tongue was cut out. You know, like, he understands the wrath of kings. Such a weird... Anyway, Eddard XI, a just perplexing chapter, the birth of a whole bunch of theories of mine that from my early days that probably don't have any truth to them, because George just wasn't thinking about it. He wasn't thinking about geography. I don't know. I don't know how to make heads or tails of this chapter. Like, he very clearly, intentionally included a bunch of peasants who had contradictory tales in order to make it seem like there was something up with these stories, and then it turns out there's nothing up with the stories. It's the geography of everything, people's motivation, Lord Tywin Lannister's master plan, Harwin's later interpretation of it versus Ned's. Like, none of it. It's messy. It's really messy. People are going to be really angry at me for trashing this chapter in the end. It's got some good lines. I'll give it that. But man, what an absolute mess. What an absolute mess this chapter is. Anyway, that's that. I guess what are we up next time? Next time we'll be talking about oh well, I'd pass it. It's done. It's done. I have no idea. Here it is. I keep passing what the next chapter is supposed to be. I've got the Eddard. And then he just keeps starting chapters of pain. So that's why I keep missing things. It's a Sansa chapter. So we're sticking around in King's Landing. In fact, I think... Oh, yeah. Eddard followed by... Because this was a fairly... Am I... How am I missing this chapter?